Take a break from your busy schedule and join Harold Sala for Guidelines, a 5-minute commentary on living.
Have you discovered that when someone says, "God told me to do something," we often think we are confronted with a very spiritual individual or someone who needs a psychiatrist? Yet some who think they're constantly hearing the voice of God are not in need of mental health care, but they do need help and clarification. They confuse the voice of God with the voice of religion and with the voice of our culture and the world. There's an interesting phrase found in an Old Testament book that speaks of three voices that confront us today: the voice of the city, the voice of organized religion, and the separate and distinct voice of God Himself. You'll find these three interesting phrases in the Old Testament book of Isaiah, chapter 66, verse 6. In this section, Isaiah mentions three voices: the voice of the Lord, the uproar from the city, and the noise which came from the temple. The first, the voice of the city, was a voice of an uproar, the voice of turmoil and confusion. It represents the way life is today. Instead of coming in neat little packages, life is often noisy, confusing, and bewildering. Media, schedules, interruption, the noise of responsibility, the clutter of activity. The second voice was the voice from the temple. It should have been clear and serene, but it was not. It was the voice of organized religion. Isaiah had condemned the priests who had become corrupt and were no longer pure. Today, as in Isaiah's day, you have to use discernment to sift the true from the false. The third voice, the voice of God, is clear and true. In the latter third of Isaiah's book, God spoke comfort to His people caught in the midst of distress. It's a message of consolation and hope, regardless of the chaos in the world about us. It isn't just positive, "Well, everything's going to be okay, so don't worry," but rather it is a clear, concise statement of the fact that God will not forsake His own, no matter how terrible and disastrous is our world. The good news is you can still hear His voice saying, "This is the way, walk ye in it." But how do you really know when we've heard God's voice? A few thoughts to help you answer the question quickly. It's not as hard as you might think. First, God's voice is a quiet, still one. It never comes drowning out the clamor of the world. You have to listen carefully. The psalmist records the prompting of the Almighty, who said, "Be still and know that I am God." The words translated "be still" mean stop striving or cease from what you're doing. This often means time out from the activities that consume us, push us to the wall. But time in His Word, in His presence, brings Him close to our hearts. Second thought, His voice almost always speaks contrary to what our old natures want to do, but never contrary to what His Word, the Bible, says. This means that what God usually wants you to do comes with a price tag attached. The ways of God and the ways of our old sinful natures are pitted against each other. You don't find a lot of people today who are honestly saying, "Lord, I'm willing to walk the narrow path, provided you walk with me." The third thought which you need to remember about the voice of God is that what He asks you to do will glorify Himself, not ourselves.
You've just heard Dr. Harold Sala with Guidelines, a 5-minute commentary on living. If you would like to listen to the program again, download a copy, subscribe to our e-commentary, or view other resources, visit guidelines.org. We would like to hear from you too. You can email us at info@guidelines.org. That's info@guidelines.org. Thanks for listening, and we invite you to join us again for the next edition of Guidelines.